too, please let us know. Please let us know where you're zooming in from, what the weather's like, how you're doing. We'd love to know. It's always wonderful to be with all of you all over the country, probably folks from around the world as well.
Oh, and so many names of so many friends. Nice to see you
Mhm.
all.
Lots of familiar names. Yeah. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for agreeing to spend some of your precious time tonight with us.
Yeah. Hi, Mariah, in the dry Nevada. It's just, I don't know if you know, it's relentlessly dry in the mountains. So the
Mm,
West is. Anybody who says you have snow, well,
jealous.
we're having envy around here, if that's you. Welcome, welcome.
As you're logging on, maybe just take a deep breath of arrival.
Mm.
You are here. We are so grateful to share space with you. Just breathing together for this next few, well, next little while together. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, welcome.
Well, as many of you know, Rosemary and I started this program, Stubborn Praise, years ago now, 5 years ago, maybe even getting towards 6. And part of our goal is to create a space where we can still stubbornly praise this difficult and beautiful world together, sharing sacred conversation through poetry and opening it up to you all if you have questions toward the end as well. So if anything percolates along the way, best to put that in the Q&A so that we know where that is, and we'll keep an eye on the chat, but it's always easier to check the Q&A. And you will also receive copies of all the poems. Don't worry if you miss a title, if you miss a line or a word. The poems will be coming to you tomorrow morning, probably.
Along with the recordings. And
That's
we'll
right.
just say hello to all the people who are joining us in big time. I'm glad you're here too. Or if you're joining us again, we welcome you doubly, double welcomed.
Right.
And our theme tonight, I think, is called Holding the Light. And I was just about to confess to James that even so, our theme is Holding the Light. Do you know what I looked for?
Hmm.
Poems about the dark.
Hmm.
It's
Well,
just so. Okay.
as I've been sharing about this, I've been saying, I think we said this when we set the theme, that it's holding the light, parentheses, and the dark.
Yeah, yeah. And how they call to each other, how they I can't stop noticing, James, just how when we turn toward one thing, it's almost as if we've just invited the other thing to open up for us. And so
Mhm.
how they almost well they call to each other, right? How there's that tug toward the opposite when we've turned one way and focused in one way. So it's just so interesting to me how that continues again and again.
That's so interesting that, when we open to something, and I think it's when we open to it completely and fully as we can, that's when the opposite also opens. We may not be facing that way, but I feel like that other possibility is also open as well. That other sort of balancing side to whatever we're opening to in the first place. And I know people often ask me, as I'm sure they ask you, why is poetry especially able to hold such seemingly opposite impulses? A thought this way, a thought this way, and yet they all belong. And I often echo you. You talk a lot about paradox and loving paradox, welcoming paradox. And I think it's true that poetry is, there's something about the container of a poem and the container of the poet receiving it, that sense of openness and ability to hold what comes, whether it is light or dark or something in between, that I think invites the paradox and invites the whole spectrum of the human experience.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I often think, the reason that the poem wants it's not just that it can, I think it wants both. And the reason that it wants both is because our lives truly are full of both, right? Our lives are full of opposition. And knowing that, um, all a poem wants, all any art wants, is to reflect what does it mean to be alive. That's what all art deeply wants, is to be a mirror for what never to answer the question, but to continuously wonder, what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be alive? What is it like now? What is it like now?
Mm. And it's a mirror we can step into
Right.
somehow. That's the miracle of it, that, it presents this mirror and then invites us into that space, not just reliving the moment or the scene that the poem is describing, but also, you know, integrating that into our lives for ourselves. And I know that whenever I'm able to do that in a poem, there's this inner celebration that happens, this inner certainty that knows I'm aligned with the human experience and that this will likely speak to other people because I've just been honest about it. And maybe honesty is one of those gateways into the opposites, the paradox that, two or more many things may be coexisting at the same time.
Right. Honesty is the gateway. Honesty is the gateway.
Hmm.
I think we should do a program sometime called Honesty is the Gateway,
I love
James.
it. I
That
love
was
it.
really, it was really lovely. I mean, I just had that full body resonance when you said it.
Hmm.
Uh, there, it's like saying yes to the world as it is. But the other thing that I heard that you said that the mirror is a miracle, which sounds like miracle. I mean, we could almost just ship them right like that. What is the miracle? Um, of being able, sorry, I can't help it. Um,
Words,
all
right?
right, but here we go. So a poem about miracles and light. I
Hmm.
have one,
Yes.
and let me find it. Uh, 13. So this one is from the unfolding. And I don't know if I've ever read it out loud before, actually.
Hmm.
It's called Smack Dab in the Middle of a Thursday. Why do I resist calling it a miracle? This light that in 8 minutes and 20 seconds has traveled 93 million miles through solar wind particles and radiation and countless numbers of solar neutrinos to land here on my living room floor. And because it can be measured and tracked, is it any less divine? As if just because it has been happening for 4.5 billion years, it is any less extraordinary. This journey of warmth and radiance. I let the light loving animal of my being curl into the spaces of the room where the sunlight pools in bright welcome, and I soften. Soften into the wonder of being alive in this very moment, in this very body, with this very heart, meeting with very gentle amazement this, even as the heart breaks and burns. Bliss. Even as the heart breaks and burns. Bliss. There it is, the paradox.
Yeah, I love the rhyme of those three words. Breaks, burns, bliss. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Why do we resist calling it a miracle? I love the way your poem balances scientific fact with like, yes, but it's a mystery. Yes, but it's a miracle. It's yes, but these things are happening, but it's also bliss. Um, and I think that is part of there should be a better word or a better phrase than brutal honesty. It's just, welcome honesty to say that these things are miracles, that this is beautiful, that this is, you know, awe-inspiring. And well, I'll read a poem that I wrote and shared with folks today.
Okay.
This is in part inspired by a phrase from the German poet Rainer Maria Rilke. And I don't know if the translation is exactly correct. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. But holding that aside, that has just meant a lot to me. And I was thinking about that as I was considering events from this past weekend that happened throughout the world. Some of the terrible news that we have received about murders and massacres. And I just had this moment in our house yesterday where the sun was setting, and I just had to stop to really soak in the light. And I felt changed. It wasn't very long, it was only a few minutes, but I was completely changed by that, and it was a miracle. Um, so this is called Let Everything Happen to You. You have a habit of walking past beauty, feeling virtuous for noticing, for instance, snow piled at the tips of the gone to seed butterfly bush like a second, unexpected bloom. Or like tonight when you passed through the hallway at sunset and found the golden light reaching through bare branches to touch the geranium in the window, leaves fanned out like little hands to receive. But this time you stopped and leaned against the wall to let it all happen to you, to trace the shadow of the plant, to watch this private show unfold. Be honest. You had carried your cargo of sorrow all day. The mass shootings, the couple whose lives were taken by their own son. Your back bent under the awful weight. And you wanted to stay in the glow of that otherworldly light, while knowing this is the only world we have. That's when you wept, remembering the man who wrestled the gun from a shooter, saving countless lives. That's when you noticed all the spent red petals scattered on the sill and floor, spread around your feet, as if to bless this ground we walk each day, as if to say, there is terror, yes, but there is also this. As I shared with Rosemary earlier, I had wanted to send that out with a recording to folks on my email list, but it was too soon. I wasn't able to make it through. So thank you for listening, all of you.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, there was an there was that moment in your poem too, by the way, where you said be honest, right? I was thinking again of this gateway of honesty, that it was the gateway of honesty that allowed you into the paradox, right? It was the
Yes.
gateway of the honesty that allowed you to say, "Oh yeah, I've been hurting all day. Oh yeah, and it's beautiful here right now, and there is this light, and I can trace this shadow. I can just see you tracing the shadow, right? And
Mhm.
here are these petals, and there is that shooter, and here is this man who stepped in, right? I mean, I feel like that there it was, that it was this pausing that allowed you to enter through the gateway of honesty to see this is what's here. This is what's here
That's right. Yeah, and I think be honest, it's be honest with yourself
with yourself.
and realize, I mean, even in that moment, of standing and looking at this light and the geranium. It's like, oh, you've been hurting all day. You've taken all this in and you're carrying this with you on top of everything else, on top of all of our personal sorrows at the same time. This is very present. So there was that honesty. There was the honesty in the moment of writing the poem, because otherwise it is a lovely moment of this light shining in, touching the geranium. But I think the honesty also comes in because a moment feels more true, doesn't it? When it's counterbalanced with something that is difficult, when you're able to experience a moment like this, sort of in spite of the other stuff, or even because of the
Right.
other stuff,
Or
maybe.
even because of.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, that's the I had the language that I made up for the not the whole language, just four words, not a whole language, but this idea of it's sometimes because of the difficult thing that we are able to see the beauty, which was kind of at the heart of this word, sarom, which comes from sorrow, and om, which I say is the paradoxical praise for beauty, love, strength, and connection that only can emerge when we wrestle with devastation and grief and the worries and pains of daily living. Sarom is the positive side effect of surrender and trust in life and death. And it is, I think, that sometimes there is beauty that we cannot see without going to these most difficult places.
And you don't have to cultivate or invite those difficult places that,
No,
you
no,
know,
they'll
that
come.
they'll show up, right? I think as a young poet, I often thought like, I need more suffering in my life. And then I watched this recording of the poet Kay Ryan, and she's like, I've lived my life with the notion that what if I just trust that enough suffering will find me? I don't need to invite any more. It's like, oh, okay. All right. I'll just trust that. That sounds like a better, healthier path for sure.
Thank you, Kay Ryan.
That's
Thank you
right.
for that, for giving that to young James.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot lately. I guess we're talking a lot about this right now, about how poetry is, in a way, what allows me to calm my central nervous system. I want to thank my friend Erica Gordon for giving me that language yesterday.
Mm.
We were talking about, I think I even asked her, what are you thinking about these days? What's up for you? And she's like, calming my central nervous system. That was the first thing that she said. And and I thought, oh my gosh, how how important that is when there are so many things that, well, I'll use the word trigger, but that agitate, that dismay, that destroy, that devastate us. And what does it mean in that then if each of us, because we see the response, we see what happens when people are dysregulated.
Yeah.
We see the violence that happens, literal and emotional and political, and I mean all the different kinds of violence that happens when we're dysregulated. So imagine that our job is to calm and regulate our central nervous system, and how poetry does that. I know for me, I know for you, how the act of sitting down and wondering what's here, the act of pausing, right, in that light with that shadow, that moment of wondering, okay, what's here, what else is here, and letting ourselves open up to that, be curious about that, bring our wonder to that, and how that act, like, what if we just did that? And how does that resonate out? What is the, that's a little woo woo, but here it is. What is the vibration of that going into the world?
Absolutely.
Because we know the vibration of dysregulation.
Mhm. We're feeling it. We're
We're
all
feeling it.
experiencing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're all responsible for the energy that we put into the world. And we also have a responsibility to take care of ourselves the best we can, I think, when we can, so that the energy we put out is not that wobbly, shaky, spiky sort of energy, that it's something that actually invites people closer because I think so much of it is an inability to calm our central nervous systems and a a loss of purpose and sense of belonging that so many have right now. And I find it mysterious and amazing that even tonight, I'm feeling a little bit of dysregulation myself all day. I'm feeling pretty tired because I'm in the Eastern time zone and I wake up insanely early to write. And so there have just been a lot of hours in this day already. And yet, when I get on here with you, Rosemary, and all of you out there, something falls away and my nervous system calms. We're reading poems, we're telling the truth to each other and connecting with each other. And, the same thing happens when I sit down to write in those small hours in the morning, that it becomes, it is literally like stepping into a church for me. And I can be so tired. I can be convinced that no truth will pass these lips, nothing good will come of sitting down at my notebook. And yet, you know, the miracle, right, of some glimmer or some large, burst of light comes through. And I think that is one of the other miracles of poetry is that it does allow us to calm ourselves. And more I turn to it for that, not believing that it's going to happen because of that resistance and that um, occasional distrust in what we know to be true. But it happens. It almost always happens.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And not to fix things, right? I guess I feel like it's very different from saying, I'm going to sit down and write a poem and it's going to help fix this feeling or make me better. Or I think it's not quite that. I think it's more of a willingness to be with and I come back to this again and again, James, how essential in a way the act of becoming a witness to ourselves, to the world, the way that poetry in particular, but I would think probably almost all kinds of writing invite a certain amount of witnessing. I always put my hand here because this is where I imagine, this is where I see myself somehow
Witnessing
right here.
happens.
But that witnessing piece, I think, is another part of how we calm ourselves down by somehow truly being able to step out of the one story we're telling ourselves, this is what it is, and being curious about what other story is possible, what other stories are here, what if I widen the lens, what if I, go closer in, what if I tell it from another perspective, and again and again and again, I feel like this. I'm just so grateful for this practice of not of only being able to trust the one little story that's on repeat in my head and how writing takes me out of that one little story and opens up a whole other realm of possibility.
Yeah. That is so true. And what I was thinking about is, when we have that one little story that we think is true, we're so often basically in an argument with the world
Right, right, right.
because there's, pushing against, there's resistance,
Validity.
friction. And I'm thinking about when I'm in an actual argument with my husband and how,
That
that
too.
little bit of backing up and witnessing, like I have a poem about when we're walking along and I'm, freaking out about something. I don't even remember what it was, but I was just like probably tired and dysregulated, honestly. And he just paused everything and picked up this beautiful hawk feather that was lying in the road. And it just like everything just dissolved from
Yeah,
there. And I was like, why are we even fighting? Because suddenly, I mean, it was almost like I was taking that hawk's eye view of what was going on and able to pause for that beauty that he was finding in the midst of this. And so, yeah, it's just that little bit of witnessing, that little bit of pulling back. And I want to say that I think that's what happened in my poem that I just read, that piece about be honest. It's like we're here for this moment, we're here for this moment, pull back. Okay, be honest.
Yeah.
What do you really want to be saying right now? What do you really, even though, you don't want to relive some of these images that we've been living with the past few days, or this news or this truth. Um, what do you want to say? What do you want to be honest about? And I think the act of doing that while writing, having that little bit of witnessing come in, can really shift a poem, can really shift a piece of writing too. And I've heard you describe your own process, so I know you're very adept at that too.
Well, one thing that I'm curious about with this, and I know I'm just thinking about how powerful that little invitation is, be honest. But I'm also thinking about how important it was in a way, I'm guessing for you, and you can tell me where I'm wrong. But I know for me, if I had sat down and written, be honest, and then I
Mm.
tried to be honest from there, and that
Yeah,
was the first thing that came out, I don't think anything would come out. I think I would be like stuck,
yeah,
right? But I feel like there's this, it's Emily, right? Tell it slant. If we can come in from the side, oh, we talk about this all the time. There's the side
side
door.
door. Yeah.
Come in through the side door, right? If we start talking about the sunset, if we start talking about the shadow, if we start talking about, this is what it was like to be out in the snow today, if we whatever it is, when we begin with, well, I'm just going to say in our bodies with a sensory check-in, what's here,
Mm.
and we allow the body to be part of it, and we come in this more natural way, then it's going to, if you've gone this far, and now we're, I'm just so interested these days in how to bring in the body, and this is one of the ways, right, is to say this is what I'm experiencing right now, and then we say be honest. Now we're in a whole new place. Right now we're already in that more centered, calm nervous system, regulated place, so that when we say to ourselves, be honest, whatever is most true has a chance to come through.
Mm. Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of grounding exercise to get in touch with the senses. And this is recommended to people, like if you're in a room and things are spinning and things feel out of control, look for five red things, or, what do you smell? What do you hear? Write down five different noises that you hear. Whatever it takes to kind of connect in with that sensory detail and with the body, I think you know, part of being honest about one's experience is to bring in the body, and we have to acknowledge that's not always a safe experience for everyone, or that's not always
Thank you.
um yeah, and it's not always a comfortable experience
No.
for those of us, and I add myself into this too, who have sometimes lived at a distance from
Yeah.
lived bodily experience. And so it can be a difficult invitation, but no matter how gentle we need to be with ourselves, I think it is a good one to, just even dip the toe in, touch in a little bit. Especially, I was going to say especially while writing, but it's true while living too. And I think the more you practice that, um, I think of it as living like a poet in a way, because a moment can happen and then you're just there for it. And if you have your notebook nearby or your phone or whatever you want to write with, you can receive it. You can, I don't even think of it as capturing the moment, but you can hold this moment and even see it more clearly.
Yeah. 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 That's beautiful. I'm glad you said that, James, about not all of us having comfort in our bodies. And I think that, in fact, the truth is that I lived so far away from my body that it's only in the last 4 or 5 years that my body's been part of my process at all. which is why
Mm.
I'm so excited about it all the time because I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, look at this incredible tool that's literally right here that I didn't there was no access to it for decades. So now that it is slowly, that relationship with my, with this has been healing, how incredible it is to see the body as a partner in creative practice. Yeah, I'm glad
Love
you
the way
brought
you
that
put that.
in. I wanted to say something else too, about how the other piece, bringing this little bit of light, right? You finding it first thing in the morning when you're sitting down to write, and also what happens when we do that together. And I've been
Yes.
thinking so much about this practice of regulating, coming together, calming, uh, telling the truth, being honest, being in our bodies, bringing curiosity. When we do that ourselves, this is incredible. But when we do it together and we have a community, then the resonance of that, right?
It's
How
huge.
that's how enormous that is. I mean, I feel like that's what's happening tonight, right? With
Mm.
this, you and I both belong to multiple communities, sometimes momentary communities, that
Mm.
last for as long as a retreat or as long as a class, sometimes much longer communities. I feel like so many people who are with us tonight, we know you, right? Like we are a community. We are people who are these are the things we want to talk about. This is what we want to live into. This is what we want to be wrestled by, and to do it together is profound. That's real change. That's real change then.
I think of it as gathering in the name of something larger than ourselves. And I think when we can write together, create together, co-create a space together, as we're doing tonight, then the ripples do seem just, and it doesn't take many people. It can be 5 people, it can be, the almost 150 people who are here with us live tonight. It's it doesn't take many people for those ripples to go out. And I was just listening to a podcast interview with someone. I think she wrote a book called The Power of Eight. And she's been convening these groups of 8 people. And they've discovered that when 8 people, just 8 people, gather together and hold this strong intention together, they are changed by that intention. And the other people, the person, that they're all kind of focusing on, is also changed by the holding of this intention. So anytime we're gathering together with the shared intention of being honest, telling the truth, or finding beauty when it's difficult, we're all going to be changed by that process. And it's a beautiful thing when we show up in that way, as all of the people here are showing up with such open hearts.
Yeah, yeah, that's real transformation. All right, I have a poem about it.
Yeah, of course you do.
Um, because let's see. Here it is. It's maybe you too have been lucky enough to find yourself on a beach somewhere with bioluminescent um, small beings, very very small beings. The poem is called Bioluminescence. Sometimes when I fear the small light I bring isn't big enough or bright enough, I think of that night on the beach years ago, when every step I took in the cool, wet sand turned a glowing, iridescent blue. And the waves themselves were a flashing, greenish hue. Imagine we could do what 7.9 billion one-celled plankton can do. Can shine when it's dark, can shine when agitated, can shine with our own inner light, and trust when we all bring the tiny light we have. It's enough to illumine the next step in the long stretch of night. Just the next step, right? Not too far, not very far. But when we all bring the light we have, We can, okay, this is what's, here we are, here's what's next. Here we are, this is what's next.
And the miracle of light showing up in the dark wherever you step. I mean, that like being met by the light, that's miraculous, that's magical in and of itself. Mm,
Right? And the fact that these are one-celled beings bringing their light,
right.
right? Like imagine what we could do. Imagine the light we're capable of. Metaphorical.
We have a lot more cells than just
Well,
one.
I mean, if we're just going to do it by cell count,
We should be bringing a lot of light,
we could
people.
be bringing so much light. And we do, and we do, and we do when
We
we do it
do.
together, we do.
I think the problem is that as your poem opens, we doubt
Yes.
that the seemingly small light we bring
Yeah.
will ever be enough. And what we don't realize is that it's often more than enough for another person who's in total darkness
Right.
or can't find their way and doesn't know the next step. It's sometimes enough just for ourselves to see where we next need to step, the next right thing, or whatever that might be. And so it doesn't, again, it doesn't take much. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the idea of, I need to be this bright, shining star. And maybe you can be, maybe you are sometimes, but the other is equally as strong and necessary, paradoxically enough.
Right. This little light of mine.
Love that.
Do you have another poem
I
for me?
do, yeah. Of course, I'm starting to stray from my plan here, as I always
Of
do
course,
when we
that's what
get
we do.
together.
That's our plan. Our plan is to stray from our plan.
That's right. Oh my gosh, you finally identified the secret. So whenever we do retreats and people ask us, what are you going to talk about? We have no idea. That's the plan.
We don't know.
So this is just a tiny poem some of you may know called Community. Science now tells us what we have known since the beginning. You and I are made of light. And if atoms can be birthed by long gone stars, whose signatures we still trace in every night sky, and if these atoms can come together to form something as complex and compassionate as a human being, then maybe we too can join hands, make some new and sacred thing that will save us all. Sometimes that poem feels more hopeful than I do. And yet, every time I read it, I'm invited to live into the sacrament of that, that we don't feel as if we can do it alone. But when we join hands, when we join our lights,
Mhm.
possibilities are endless.
Okay, you just said living into the sacrament of hope, right? You
Mm.
said the word hope before, but isn't that beautiful? Living into the sacrament of hope. And how astonishing that you can write a poem that's more hopeful than you are. Which is, I think, one of the greatest superpowers of poetry, right? Is to let us imagine the world we most deeply want to live in. Imagine the world we most audaciously hope is possible.
Yes.
And to me, that's one of the greatest gifts of poetry is that it is a venue for that. Not just to be what we're against, but what are we for? What can we believe? What do we know is true? What proof do we have? Right? We
Mhm.
know the plankton are true, right? Those neutrinos I was talking about earlier, those are true. The way that cells of a body work together, that's true. That's all true. That all happens. And so now it's just this power of metaphor. Okay, beautiful teacher of the real world. These things happen. It's happening now. And what do you have to teach us about what it could be like?
I think that is so true. I have so many things to say about that too. I years ago, and I think this was not too long after I first came across your poetry, Rosemary, but I've been thinking for a long time that, we need all forms of art, but I have to admit the art that I am most drawn to feels intentional. It feels like it is trying to do what we're talking about, which is to redream, reimagine the world as it could be, as it has been, as we want it to be. And I think in no, I know in the act of redreaming and reimagining the world, we are changing it little by little by little. It's happening. And I think that is where the intention comes in, because when you intend to redraw, redream something, then you're changed. Anyone who encounters that is changed. Anyone who encounters you is also changed. And, this might sound woo-woo to some people, probably not the people who are with us today because they already know us. But I believe that wholeheartedly, that in the act of doing that, we are changing the world and we are changed by just the very reimagining of something.
Right, right. The redreaming. I love this word, redreaming. Reimagine, redream. Redreaming the world. I'm just coming up with anthology titles tonight.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
like my
Yeah,
job
let's
is to
do
come up
it.
with anthology. And this is the next one is redreaming the world.
Oof. That's a tall order, but I think we're
Well,
in for
we
it.
don't start there. We just start with where we are. The
Well, that's
redreaming will
it.
come.
That's it. We start with where we are,
We start with where we
and I think you can redream the world if you're being honest about where you are, where the world is, what's happening, what's passing through you right in this moment. Then you can say, okay, this is our starting point.
are. Right.
Now we build onto that.
And
We
that's the
tear
only
down.
place. That's the only place to start. That is the only place to
Mhm.
start is saying yes to the world as it is. That's the only real starting place is by being exactly here. Be honest,
Yes.
right? Be honest. And then from that place, what's possible, which is
And
everything, which is everything.
it's everything. And everything becomes possible when you articulate what you wish to see, what you hope to see, what you know should be the case, will be the case. I just want to say, I often tell people be careful with poetry because it will make things happen. So I think poetry is way wiser than I ever will be, than all of us are. And there's just this magical spell-like quality to a poem. So many, many years ago, I'm sitting at a table in St. Louis, Missouri, wondering where my life is going to end up. And I write this poem about this farmer and his husband and I'm totally imagining them, just imagining
Just
a
imagining.
farmer and his husband. I'm the husband, just
Imagine that. Yeah.
full disclosure. And it ends up in my first book. And so, I actually go to a reading not long after the book is out. I read the poem out loud. And then a month later, I meet the farmer from the poem. And then I give him my book. It's the only book I have. And he opens it to that poem
No, no,
and
no. You
starts
can't make
reading
this stuff
it.
up.
Oh. And he looks at me and he's like, the circumstances were different. And I'm talking about apples. I thought maybe he would be growing apples or something. But he looks up at me after reading the poem. It's like, is this about me? And I said, yes, I think it was about you. And I think what's amazing about this, and also what you just said, Rosemary, that you felt like until the last 4 or 5 years, you were living more at a distance from your body. And yet, those of us who love your poems and read your poems all the time, we're thinking this person is so embodied. She is so in touch with all the senses, right? So I feel like the the poems were saying, come back to your body, come back to your body. My poem was saying, redream, imagine the future you wish to see, and these things happen. Now, I'm not promising anything. This is not like one of those, QVC commercials or something like, I guarantee this will happen if you start writing poetry. But I believe that if we all sat down and started redreaming the world, um, it's going to change.
You're kind of helping me make peace with something that I sometimes struggle with. I have a friend who calls them the lettuce poems. I always hear Luttuce, but it's the Letus poems, the let us
Mm.
poems, which are basically prayers, which are basically
Yes.
they're prayers. And and I feel like I have a little love-hate relationship with the lettuce poem. But I think that the love part of it is the part that's willing to say, help, help me redream. Help me see what's possible. Help me step, make that one next step of light on the beach. I just want help me be part of that next step on the beach and just light it up that much. And how do poems help us redream? How do poems help us to re-see? How do poems, by the way, which is making me think of this word revision, which I've been thinking a lot about lately too.
Yeah.
The difference between revisioning a poem and editing a poem. Which one would you rather do? Like I just think that to edit a poem sounds so honestly kind of painful and red pennish, and to revision a poem, to step back into it and ask it, what else do you have to teach me? What else is here? Um, you know, I feel like that those are two very different processes. I'm not slamming editing. I don't mean to edit, I'm not, oh my God, how many years have I been an editor? That was my
Mhm.
title for so many years. But I'm kind of enamored and words matter, and I've been thinking a lot about revisioning. And as we
Mhm.
continue to work with, or as I would prefer to say, as we continue to play with our poems, how do we put ourselves into that attentiveness that we're curious about what else do you have to teach me? What else is here? And let revisioning be what guides us as we're moving into older poems or even a poem we just wrote and just oh well there's something else besides tweaking, which is fun. I love tweaking too. I love the
Mhm.
of it all. I just today I went back and forth and back and forth between the. I landed on for this particular one, but and just wondering again and again, what does this poem want? What does this poem want? What is this poem asking of me? What wants
Right.
to come through? How do I get out of the way enough for this to come through? Where am I the obstacle? Where is my resistance? And in that way, allowing this idea of revisioning, redreaming, re-seeing being a part of what helps us meet a poem again in a really holistic um, way that's in service as opposed to must make it better, must make it perfect, must make it right.
Mhm.
They're very different. They just feel very different to me.
Yeah, and even the act of, I love the word you're using, revisioning, because it has the word vision in it. I mean, who wouldn't want to um, step into the space of revisioning something? That just sounds so much more exciting and dynamic. And and I think it helps if you're seeing the poem as almost a living, breathing thing on its own that you have created that has, and this ties in with our talk about redreaming, imagining. The poem has a life of its own. It has desires of its own. It may want to go in a place that you don't want it to go, or that you're afraid to let it go. And so doing that deeper listening, and really it's not even listening so much as allowing it to happen, I think. just allowing the poem to unfold as it wants to when you're writing it, allowing yourself to be surprised. And then in that revisioning process, what feels most helpful is to just do some of that witnessing work, like pulling back, from the personal connection to the poem and just witnessing how the poem is unfolding. And from a very just kind of, I don't know, logistical standpoint, I guess that's one of the reasons I think I write by hand because I have to transfer that onto the computer at some point. And it's in the transferring that some major revisioning and changes can happen. Sometimes maybe not, but that happens. And then printing it out and typing it again. And it gets in your body the more you allow it to, the more you create these sort of invitations to let the poem pass through again, reading it out loud to someone you trust as well.
Oh, yeah, the reading out loud to someone else, and even just to ourselves.
Yes,
Even just to ourselves. Yeah.
absolutely.
Do you have another poem?
Me too. Me too. Um, we'll stick to the script for this one. Such that it is. Um, I have so many that I want to share, but um, oh, I lied. The one I want to share is not in the script, so bear with me, everyone. This is another recent poem, and I think it fits with our discussion because this is one I don't usually write in the moment. I tend to kind of write after the fact when I'm at my desk early morning doing my own thing. And so this one came really in the moment and then was revisioned later on. So this one is called It's Good to Be Here. It's good to be here, I say out loud, to give the words the physical presence they deserve in the warm bakery with us, this place we've been coming for years now. The familiar pale blue chairs and a few snowflakes feeling their way down through the air. The scent of bread and croissants rising in vast lit ovens we glimpse through a window into the kitchen, flour dusting everything. It's good to be anywhere, I think, but do not say this time. At last, glad to be alive in a body that spills a little over my too tight belt, acquiring more and more of the tiny moles my mother used to call beauty marks. I lift the last few crumbs of a scone from my plate with strawberries and bluebells painted along the side, saying to myself, like some god trying to remake this world, it is good, it is good, it is good.
Oh, there it was. There was you
Thank
couldn't have
you.
spelled it out any more clearly in those last two lines. That was so beautiful. I mean, all right, but here's my question for you is when you were reading it again just now, what rose up for you as you were reading it? What did you notice about yourself or about your poem?
Hmm. I noticed when I said it's good to be anywhere, this ball of emotion rose up for me. Um, and then just this little inner smile that I'm talking about spilling over my too tight belt and these tiny moles that just keep appearing with age. And then just that power in the end of, thinking about the Bible and, the sort of typical versions of God, but feeling the power of saying, it is good. It is good to be here. This scone tastes good. Like just the simple joy, authentic power of articulating that. And it came because I said it out loud to my husband, Brad. Like, it's really good to be here. We have this favorite boulangerie in Quebec City, and it's like, oh, we're here again. It's warm. we're smelling things that are amazing that we can't make ourselves. And but thinking about the people who are not with us, who are elsewhere, and thinking about how heartbreaking that can be, but it's still, it's a difficult spiritual truth, I think, to live into. It's good to be anywhere because some places don't feel good
Yeah.
on this planet, or some people are living in circumstances that are not what we would typically call good. And yet there is a trust in aliveness and the beauty of humanity at the same time. So I guess there's a lot packed into this poem, and I was maybe straying more into my head rather than my body, which is what you were
Oh no, that
asking
was
about.
really an embody. I mean, come on, those crumbs, that scone. I was t that smell of the boulangerie. I was there.
Mm,
I was there in the goodness of it.
mm,
In the goodness
thank
of
you.
it.
Mm,
I remember when you sent that one out, and I remember, just feeling as if I were sitting beside you eating that scone, right?
mm, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Which
think
is, oh, go ahead.
no, you were so excited. Go ahead.
Well, just thinking about how poems do that, how they invite us in. If the poet has been in there in, if you're telling the truth, then I receive that, right? I receive that, and it brings me in too, right? I remember being completely with you there in that boulangerie when I read it, and I thought, yes, yes, I'm there. So that we have this, we also have an embodied experience as a reader
Yeah.
when we're participating by reading it.
Yeah. And I was just going to wonder aloud, how do we do that? How does a poem do that? And I think it is trusting the wisdom of the poem itself. I think it is, as you're saying, being honest about where we are in our own experience. And I think for me anyway, I've heard other poets talk about this, but there's an effort maybe through poetry to become more and more transparent. Not so much see-through, but like there's no there's no barrier between myself and the reader, or the experience I'm describing in a poem. Doesn't mean I would put everything in a poem or share that with everyone. But what I am sharing is barrierless. There are no blockages. And that's how I want to live my life too. That, it is also a difficult, almost impossible thing to live into, but to experience the world without all of these masks and other things that we put in front of it, because when we're able to do that and be in our bodies and not as and more regulated, then I think that is when those vibrations are sent out into the world. And I think it encourages all of us when we read a poem like yours, stepping on the sand, those plankton, the light meeting us, like, yes, I can do that too, but it's metaphor. So I can find my own small ways of doing that. I can find my own metaphorical scone or croissant today and hold on to that and say it is good.
Boy, I didn't know that the subtitle for our program tonight should have been "Be Honest," right? But I feel like that's it. I mean, I feel like that's what you
It
just said is
is.
how can I be
Yeah.
more transparent? How can I be more honest with myself, which translates to a reader, but I think it begins right here. And I feel like, the other words for that would be what would be vulnerability, which invites intimacy. Um, and I feel like part of that is a certain willingness to touch the most difficult moments and say, okay, I'll meet you. I'll meet you. And I'm going to meet you with language, which is honestly for you and I think for a lot of the people here, not for everyone though, of course, a playground, right? To
Yeah.
come in, how can I bring this most difficult thing into my playground and meet it in this way? Okay, well, what if I use this word? Oh, not that word. Oh, but what about, okay, yes, that word. And so how do we allow the most difficult things to become a part of our how do we invite them into this place of play, wonder, curiosity? This to me, this is one of the other great gifts of a poem, which of course now I am thinking of one that kind of exemplifies this.
Well, before I lose it, I was just going to say, I think part of the reason we're able to do that is because the playground is also a cathedral.
Yes.
It's like the playground is this, whatever your version of that sacred space might be, that it's total play and it's really sacred and serious at the same time. And the play is sacred. It's those opposites just getting melded and married together.
To- Yes, the playground and the cathedral at the same time. Yeah, yeah,
Another
exactly.
retreat
And we could
title
also,
already.
and the field, right? The playground there, and the next is just one after another. These are all the things we most want to talk about and play with, explore with each other. So this is a poem called Wordlessly. It's very short, but it's about a very tender, difficult moment. Um, Yeah, I guess there's an irony that it's called wordlessly, and yet I'm using words to try and touch the moment. But it was a wordless moment. Um, Wordlessly. With such gentleness, he stood behind me and held me as I wept. Held me the way a pond holds a lotus, the way a scarf holds perfume, the way a man who has lost his child holds the mother of their child. His hands so light on my hands, as our fingers laced into a tender weave, held me the way the pericardium holds the heart, the way the eye holds a tear, then lets it slip away. I guess I'm just thinking about honesty and tenderness and intimacy and vulnerability. And when we allow words to come and try to touch that moment. And I remember just being curious in this poem when I wrote it again and again about what held me how, the way a what holds a what. And I kept trying different things on the way a blank holds a blank, the way a blank holds a blank. And, the poem ends up with a few of them in it, the way that the pond holds the lotus. But maybe I think my favorite is the way the pericardium holds the heart, which is that it floats, that the heart floats, one of my favorite facts about the human body. And to think, how do we hold each other? How do we hold each other in our darkest, most terrifying, most sorrowful moments? How do we hold each other?
Mm,
And and it can be a super tight embrace, which can feel just right, or it can be, like the shore of the pond, which is going to conform to the pond.
mm,
Whatever the pond is doing, that's what the shore is going to do.
yeah.
It's it and then the pond will do what the shore is doing, and it becomes this mutual holding. And I'm just so curious about these most vulnerable, tender moments, and how do we show up, be honest in these moments, and wonder, be honest and bring wonder,
Mm,
both, right? As if
mm,
to say be honest means there's one right way to do it. Well, no, there's not. To say be honest is to say what is it like, and what else, and what else, and what else, and what else is it like, and to bring this constant curiosity, um, knowing that everything that we come up with is just another frame, is just another story, and all of them will defy what is most true, and what is most true will always be wordless. What is most true is a pure expression, is a pure
mhm.
experience that can never be captured by words, but the words will do their best and touch it as best they can.
Yeah. Yeah, words always do their best. And I think so many of the most powerful moments are wordless ones, where language is not necessary or even capable of touching what has happened. And that's when the holding is necessary. And I felt like I had something, maybe this is it, maybe it's not, but it's coming to me now. But just in listening, the way the pawn holds the lotus, pericardium holds the heart, the eye holds a tear. In a way, it's how a poem holds something difficult or these difficult truths. It is with gentleness, but also autonomy in a way, that the poem itself is going to be changed by what it's holding. We're changed by that. So it's this mutual kind of sharing of the change. But that autonomy piece, because the heart floats, it's given space, it's given room. It just feels important to how a poem holds these truths as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, autonomy. Way to throw in a word that I was like, what? Where could he possibly go from here? And yet, to think of the poem and how we meet it in this way,
Mhm.
how it shows up on its own, the poem's own autonomy without, I mean, even kind of without us.
Yes. Yeah. They very much do. I mean, I've spoken about this with other people when they ask about my practice of making anthologies. I really see poems as living, breathing things, and they want to be in conversation with us, and they want to be in conversation with each other. And there is something mystical that can happen when you put poems together that may not even have ever realized they wanted to be together.
Right.
It's
Oh yeah, I've
amazing.
felt that before so many times reading your anthologies, James, and all of a sudden the way two poems come in, I'm like, oh, and you turn the page and like, oh, oh.
Well, yeah, I mean, it happens in your collections. It happens when we're putting together these individual books too. I think when we can be that sort of witness a little bit and pull back and just like, okay, how do these poems want to be woven together? I think of them almost as a mosaic too, that they each have their own color, their own shape, but they're creating this larger story in a book, especially when it's not a book length poem, but you're collecting these individual pieces.
Yeah. It occurs to me, I had forgotten, but we often like to let people, invite people to ask questions, which I
Mhm.
kind of had forgotten about. But perhaps it's a good time to say that if you do have a question, or something that you wish we would speak on, or comment, is there a Q&A?
Yeah,
Yes, there
there's
is. Oh, and look, there are things in it already. Well, that's good. Maybe
we
we should go
have
ahead and take a peek at that.
we have a request to for you to sing.
Oh, well, let's do this little light of mine at the end. I think that could not possibly, that'll be a really lovely way for us to end. That'll be really nice. Thank you,
Okay.
Christina. We'll do that together.
Hmm.
And here's an invitation from Dee. She says, James, could you talk more about poems as a mosaic?
Sure. I think I was thinking of more, I guess, putting together the anthologies, but really my own individual collections more than anything else of, sometimes poems feel they have a power all their own and they're catching the light in their own way. But when you put them together with other poems, you're creating this larger shape, story, image, even intention, as we were saying earlier. I think when the poems are all gathered together, they're hopefully creating this power of their own. Um, and so that's kind of where I came to the mosaic idea. And there are certain poems that maybe you wouldn't even have published on your own or shared with other people that somehow that little piece works in this larger mosaic. At least that's been my experience with
Yeah.
poems.
And I'm going to say that that's not only true in a larger gathering of poems, a collection, whether it's a collection or an anthology, but I feel like it's also true in a poem itself when we find, I mean, we
Mm.
could just We could take it down to the smallest level and we could say it's a mosaic of words, or we could take it slightly larger and say it's a mosaic of images. And so thinking about how, you're writing along and you've got this image, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, and then the neutrinos, right? Or then the shadow of the plant on the wall, or whatever it is, right? Then how the poem itself becomes this mosaic of images, and how they're at play, and I don't know. I mean, this is what you spoke about, why you like to write by hand, and part of the reason I like to write and compose on my computer is because it's so much easier to like take, oh, that line if I put it up here, oh, this line if I put it up here, and instead of the arrows, 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 which on my pages in my journals tend to get really complicated. So that's part of why I like composing on a computer, is because it becomes this really well, it's a great playground tool, right? Oh yeah, what if I do this, and I can copy and paste it so that it's intact, and then have my other version that I'm like, what? Well, what if I try this, and what if I try this, and what if I do this? I'm going to bring in a question from Frank. Have you ever had the experience of writing a poem that contains a metaphor meaningful to you, but at the time of writing was unknown to you? I mean, absolutely. I feel like that's pretty much all of them. I feel like that's it. I mean, and I feel like especially one of my favorite things to do is just to start with an object and have no idea. And it could be something like you're saying, a metaphor that's meaningful, like a door. Doorways are almost always, I can't stop thinking about doors. Doors, man, I cannot stop thinking about doors. And there was the gate of honesty. Gates, just another kind of door. So there's these different metaphors, and will have no idea whatever is going to happen when I sit down to write. And then I'm like, oh, that's what's here. And in this way, I feel like this is the way that metaphor opens us to epiphany again and again and again. Even if we write on this, I could write 100 door poems. I could write 1,000, apparently, moon poems, and still be discovering something new. Yeah. How about you, James?
Yeah, I think very similar. I don't always know what I'm writing. I almost never know what I'm going to come up with when I sit down to write. So my practice really is one of surprise. And then usually other people are pointing out to me like, oh, that metaphor connects with this and then this. I too have been obsessed with doors, locks, unlocking, a lot of locks over the years. And you know, I think one thing that's coming to mind is I wrote this poem called Unlocking the Heart, and it's about, how just the right word, sometimes someone says it the right way, it just opens something in us that we hadn't expected. And then that became the title of a book of mine. But then I realized, I thought back to, gonna get personal here, but I was working with my therapist and teaching in academia. I wasn't really very happy in my job. And I said I was feeling really like stifled. And she's an arts therapist, so she asked me to draw it, which is I sort of dread that moment. She's like, "Oh, would you like to turn to the art now?" Like,
No,
no,
anything but that.
because the truth will come out in the art. And so I just, I get in this place where I allow something else to take over, and I drew this heart inside this locked cage. And it's just like, wow. Okay, well, that's undeniable. So it was only later that I made the connection between that and my poem and the title of the book. So sometimes these metaphors are working throughout our writing and our lives, and you're right, Frank, we don't have any idea.
No, no, and in fact, I mean, and that's the premise of my whole TED talk is about these metaphors that are at work that
Mhm.
we are completely oblivious to. We don't recognize that the metaphor is there, and yet we use it again and again. This is a test. Oh, well, is it a test? If it's a test, are you failing? Because, but what if it's not a test? What if this is a dance? What if this is a path? What if this is, there's so many hidden in our language, because our brains work in terms of frames and metaphors. I mean, well, I could go off on this for too long, but I just want to say yes, yes, that this is one of the greatest gifts of poetry is to help us see the metaphor and open it up. And as you're pointing out, James, it's true of any art, right? Could you draw it? And now,
Mhm.
now what opens for us, right? Could you dance it?
Mm.
And now what happens if you dance the door, right? Or
Right.
as Rilke would say, dance the orange. What does that mean? How do we do that? um, and Merlin, who I know is Caroline, asks, how do you go from a place where you're stuck on one side of the paradox? Oh, well, I have an idea right away, but how about you, James?
Well, I mean, it's not easy, I think, but naming which side of the paradox you're on, naming where you are stuck, admitting that, being honest about it, as we've been saying, and if you can, surrendering to that as completely as you can. I think that is when other possibilities then open up. And I'm just saying this, I feel it to be true in my body. I can't think of a specific instance because it doesn't usually happen like, I'm in grief and then I turn around and now I'm in joy. They come tangled together and it's a little more nuanced and complicated than that. But I'm excited to hear your answer, Rosemary.
Well, mine comes from Byron Katie, the work of Byron
Mm,
Katie, who she calls it the work,
mhm,
and in it, it was so life-changing for me, period, but it also shows up in my poems all the time, and I often say this, if you can write one true thing, then write its opposite and see if it's also equally true,
mhm,
right? And so to and I do it constantly, right? I'll say it in the poem. I forget what poem it was. I just read it or wrote it recently. It was something like, "It's easy," and then the next line is, "It's the hardest thing I've ever done."
mm,
Oh, I know which poem it is. Okay, I'll read it because it's a good example of this about thinking I'm on one side of the paradox and I'm like, oh well, actually I'm on the other side, and but the joy of it is this: that if you can't say if the truth is it's easy
mm,
and then you write down it's the hardest thing I've ever done and you're like, yeah, that's not really true, then you could write it as a question. It's easy. Is it really easy? Am I
mhm,
sure it's easy? Is it possible it's hard? Is it also hard? Right? So instead of saying it as another statement, as another truth, to just bring it in as the opposite in a question. I
mhm.
wonder if I can find it very quickly. Maybe look at another question for a second.
Well, I was going to say too, I mean, part of that process with Byron Katie's work is to really interrogate, is this true? And what I think you're trying to do is to find some little opening
Yeah.
where something
Yes, that's it.
might,
It's to find the little opening. That's
right?
exactly it, James.
Yeah. And so I think, instead of expecting a total about face, I think we're gently interrogating again and again and again. And those of us who are writers with each new poem or each new thing we write, we're trying to find those openings where we might not be 100% right, where this might not be totally true. And nothing usually is totally true, and no one is completely right. And I'm right
Despite,
about that.
are you right about that? Despite popular belief,
Well, yeah,
despite certain people who really are sure they're right.
that's
Um,
true. They do exist.
this is a poem called How the Healing Happens. Again today I dig with my teaspoon into the soil of sorrow. It is said there is healing water somewhere below. Perhaps I wished for a shovel. Perhaps there was no shovel to be found. Perhaps I did find a shovel, but the work was too heavy, too hard. It is not too hard to dig one teaspoon at a time. Anyone can do it. The hole gets wider, deeper. At some point, it feels like a well. It is easy work. It is the hardest work I've ever done. I thirst. Yet, what heals us is not only the promised water, what heals is the work itself. Dry and slow, one spoonful, and another spoonful, and another parched spoonful, and another. It's the easiest, it's easy. It's easy. You can dig in that soil of sorrow with a teaspoon, just one teaspoon. I can do that. Nope, nope, can't. That's the hardest thing I've ever done. One teaspoon, too much.
Right.
And I feel like this again, this is the work of the metaphor. I had no idea when I started this poem. It began with this idea, today grief is a teaspoon. I had no idea, going back to Frank's earlier question, I had no idea what this metaphor had to teach me. But we both know that I could go back in and write the poem in which grief is a shovel.
Right.
And that would also be true. And I could go in and write the poem in which grief is a freaking bulldozer, and that would also be true.
Mm.
And 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 so it is that the metaphor opens us again and again and again, wondering, and this is, I think, the real thing, Caroline, is, to wonder what's true, what else is true, and just again and again and again challenge what we think we know, challenge the story, challenge the metaphor, challenge the frame again and again and again. And that's the witness can do that. The I, the ego can't always do that, but the witness can always do that.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it happens slowly. It feels dry, boring sometimes to do that in interrogative work, asking those questions. It is like the little teaspoon, and yet progress is made. Um, whatever that means. And that just means we're going deeper. We're going deeper into our own experience. That's how I think of progress, not I suddenly feel 100% better or I'm in joy all the time, but it's the progress of understanding one's experience most deeply. And I love your practice, Rosemary, of, today grief is, or I was thinking of it as what is grief today. And like that too is this ongoing interrogation. And if you are allowing yourself to do that, eventually you will see that grief is all things. It can be anything.
Which actually feels like it goes into this comment from Todd Emerson Greenberg. If we
Mhm.
let everything happen to us, then is there really a paradox? In acceptance, is that not becoming into one? Um, I mean, that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think you just
yes.
answered your own question there. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, well done. The question and
Mhm.
answer all in one. But I think that is true. Although I think the body might say differently, right? The
Yes.
body might be like, actually, I do really know the difference between pleasure and pain. Although
Yeah.
then there's the pleasure that's pain and the pain that's pleasure, and
Mhm.
yeah, we I guess.
Yeah. I think, I'm really interested in that word acceptance because I just have a really weird relationship to it. I've never liked the word like I accept you or like just acceptance when people are talking about grief and pain and I think somehow the word integration is coming to me like we're probably not going to be able to be one with everything or let everything happen to us in the moment that it happens to us. But I feel like that process of digging with the teaspoon is this slow integration of, yes, this has happened to me. Yes, I can open to this. I can face this right now. Um, it's not the enlightenment moment probably that most of us would love to have, but I think it's small moments of enlightenment. Like, yes, this is a part of me now. Yes, this is a part of me now too. And just making peace with all of those parts of ourselves. That makes up acceptance for me and how I think about it.
Yeah. I want you to find another poem to read to
Absolutely.
close. And then while you're doing that, I'm going to share just that I think too on the same lines about I think a lot about not the what but the how, not the what but the how. And so in this integration that you're talking about, how do we do that? And I have a poem, The Grand Quilt, that's talking about taking these most difficult pieces and stitching them together with the most beautiful pieces. And how do we do that with reverence? How do we make that choice? I'm going to take these most difficult parts and integrate them. And how do I do that? I'm going to do it with beauty. I'm going to do that with intention. I'm going to do, just there's a certain willingness, but there's also a devotion, a practice that comes in.
Mhm.
Yeah. James, I think if you read another poem and then maybe we'll close with this little light of mine.
Okay. This poem is called In a Friend's Garden. This is for our mutual friend, Christy Nelson. And it's really about a moment of presence. And I think that that is what I mean by integration, that it's all of our parts come together in our bodies and we're just there, we're just present. So this is In a Friend's Garden from Turning Toward Grief. I want to be here to see the poppies open, my friend says, telling me why she never travels anymore in the middle of summer. We each hold one of the heavy buds whose petals already ache to break free and spread, bursting red at the seams. The mulch is warm beneath our feet, and sunlight shimmers pink in the shifting leaves of the Japanese maple. I keep hearing her words, I want to be here, and feel something new leaning toward the light inside me too. Some seed of need just to be rooted right where I am for each small pleasure, every rippling wave of sorrow. She wraps an arm around me, and we go inside for tea. There is nothing to escape from but our own desire to escape at all.
Right. I want to be right here.
Mm,
I want to be right here.
mm.
Nothing to escape from but our desire to escape. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
And thank you, friends, for joining us. I'm so grateful. Well, by popular demand, what if we do a sing along with this little light of mine? We're just gonna do the words we all know, and please sing along right there in your own home. Whether you think you sing well or not, you could just say the words out loud if you don't think singing is it for you. But why not? What a great way for us to close on this almost solstice evening. Here we go. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Thank you, friends. Thanks,
You
James.
all so much. Thank you, Rosemary. Wishing you all a beautiful winter solstice if you're here with us in this hemisphere. And please take good care of your hearts. And we hope to see you again soon. Bye, everyone.